Joe Streeter, the news editor of Payment Expert, reporting for Gambling TV. It is my absolute pleasure to be joined by Jason Thomas of Tappit and Chad Johnson of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Guys, so I'm not sure if you're aware of our site, but we cover payments news, we cover sports betting news, and we cover sports business news. So this partnership sort of hits every nail on the head for us. Just so if you could just give us a little bit of background about how it came about and, what it means for the fan experience for the Jaguars.
Yeah, absolutely. Chad, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah, I think first it's important to know that we started these conversations well before the COVID outbreak had happened. So we were engaging with Tappit to look at some solutions, multiple solutions actually. One, we're all still trying to solve for who is actually in our stadiums. We know the ticket buyer data, but we don't always know who their guests are and other things. One solution Tappit provides is I might know somebody that's in my stadium that didn't purchase a ticket but is here as a guest, and therefore they become a prospect for us in the future because I can track their payments that they're making through the stadium. Two, we are a very heavy data-driven company, but I once heard somebody say that we are drowning in data but starving for insight. And that is something I believe that Tappit also helps us with, is understanding and having insight more into our customers' experience, so that while they're in the stadium, I can customize that experience for them in a way that's very relevant. I can understand what they purchase, when they purchase, where they purchase, and therefore create a very unique experience for every single fan that's different than the person that you might be sitting next to it. And I look at and compare some things, like my experience on Amazon making a purchase is going to be very different than your experience on Amazon making a purchase, because it's picking up your past behaviors and understanding and customizing that experience. So through Tappit, I should be able to do that with my customers as well. And as I walk them through the purchase journey, they can have a very customized experience. And then COVID just really helped speed up us deciding it's time to move forward and get along, because it adds that next layer of safety, security, cashless transactions, and less contact points.
Yeah, that was sort of my next question was like, how has, we know that the cashless environment within sports stadiums was something that was a big desire pre-COVID, which seems like so long ago now, but pre-COVID. But how has the context of, I guess, the importance of a cashless environment in sports stadiums changed as we move forward and, hopefully get beyond this pandemic?
Well, so this is the first year that we here at TIAA Bank Field and the Jaguars have gone completely cashless. But there's a difference between cashless and this Jags Pay mobile payment solution, because even though we're cashless, we are trying to limit contacts. And Tappit and our Jags Pay does that. We have a completely contactless payment solution. So no longer inserting a chip card, no longer having to touch a terminal. The Jags Pay is done through a self-scanned kiosk by the customer and gives you one less touch point for them.
Okay. And Jason, I wondered if you had anything to add on that. I mean, you're experiencing it beyond just the Jaguars, experiencing it all round, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we found is, we were pre-COVID, we were very busy anyway, and I think the appetite for our solution was globally increasing anyway, partly because of points Chad's made in relation to, I think a lot of organisations have realised that they're not as close to the fan and the fan behaviour as they'd like to be. And also they're always looking to ways to, improve fan experience and increase revenues, of course. But then I think what COVID's really done is, I think in a nutshell, I think clients who were considering using our type of solution, but were maybe fearful of fans' reaction to change, have now decided that this is the time to do it, to keep the staff safe and to keep the fans safe. And then I think the other thing that's changed is partners who we were in discussions with and who had decided to go cashless, but we're going to evolve it, let's say, in a more cautious way by the side of traditional payment methods. I think, to use a phrase, they've decided to rip the Band-Aid off now and not evolve it by traditional payment methods, and they're going for it in a much more conclusive way, if you like. Without a doubt, I think there's many organisations, the majority of organisations we've talked to are, this is a kind of fork in the road, if you like, and they'll never go back to cash. It's literally that simple. So there has been such a significant sea change in the last 4 or 5 months, I think, with major organisations' attitude to this kind of technology.
Okay, that's interesting. And how we've seen, mentioning the sort of fork in the road point there, we've seen, and credit to them, we've seen the Jaguars embrace it fully. Is there scope for clubs and organisations that there is a bit of reluctance there? They can embrace it and it can coexist with older, dare I say, more traditional payment methods, or what once were more traditional payment methods, and the two can coexist even if it's for a brief time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have two different clients, pre-COVID and COVID, in the COVID world now, we really fundamentally have two different client bases, partner bases. One is really, we've worked for a few years now with partners who, they obligate the adoption, if you like. They don't have any other payment method types because the data is so key to them and the benefits is so obvious to them. They've obligated it. And if you look as an example at the Bundesliga in Germany, they've obligated it for quite a period of time. And then we've had, then we have another client base who, as you say, evolve it really, Joe, by the side of other payment types. And yeah, they can absolutely coexist. It's a difficult one, isn't it? I think, and it's really a dichotomy that I think a lot of large organisations go through, where they understand the benefits of a technological change, but they are slightly fearful of fans' reactions to it. And I think it really, the key for us really, and we couldn't have anybody better on the call than Chad really, the key to us really is working with partners who really understand the benefits to the organisation and, most importantly, to the fan experience. And they're really behind making it work and making the fans see the benefits really quite quickly. What I've always found with sports fans, being a sport fan myself, is you can't rebrand yourself with sports fans. It has to work quickly, and the benefits have to be really communicated in a very clear way. So I think for us, whether it's a case of partners evolve it or they obligate it, we're really looking for partners who understand the benefits of the data piece, and like Chad, and the Jaguars, where they're really committed to improving that fan experience. And Chad's comments earlier really about having some kind of personalised experience as a fan, even though the action on the pitch is going to be the same, is actually, it's really, really key is how can we take that fan experience to the next level, and why is it going to be a more enjoyable experience for Jags fans than it is going to an alternative club?
Yeah, Joe, let me add something too that's interesting from our standpoint. Many teams, if not all teams here in the United States, are going to mobile tickets as well, no longer having the paper tickets, which is forcing fan behavior to adopt the technology already. So now they're going to be less resistant to add layers like a mobile payment solution on top of that, because they're being forced into having to adopt that. And the Jacksonville Jaguars have one of the oldest average age of season ticket members in the NFL. So then you would go, that might be an audience that would be very resistant to, and getting involved and entering into the technology. And we had those conversations in advance, but we were bullish to move forward, and we were met with very little resistance. We anticipated a lot, and were not met with a lot of resistance. In fact, we were met with a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
For me to be able to now, through this solution, through this Jags Pay and Tappit solution, for me to be able to serve an offer to the fan sitting in seat one that says, go get a Pepsi, it's a discount for you for being a loyal fan, and the person next to you gets, go get a Budweiser because you're a loyal fan, because I know what's relevant, and I'm no longer serving them up something that's not valuable. And imagine those two people sitting next to each other, and they both go look at their phone and see a unique message to them. And they know that it's because of their behavior. That is something that's invaluable to us, and that will live well post-COVID. That experience will live on forever as a customer service benefit for them.
I think that's absolutely right. And I think that value as well for sponsors to the business, you know, and having that rich data, you know, for a club sponsors is again really key, and helps them monetize it in a way they've really not been able to do before. I think also, you know, I think one of the challenges a lot of modern sports organizations or venue owners have is really trying to change, you know, stadiums into 365 stadiums, and the idea again of how do you fill those stadiums outside of a sporting season, as an example. And I think one of the great things about what we do, and one of the differences about what we do, is we have different cashless solutions. So we do have RFID solutions and wearables and, you know, wristbands and cards, etc. And I think the reason why that's actually really quite important is because, you know, if Chad makes a really good point around the mobile ticketing element of the US. One of the big differences between the US and Europe, as an example, in sport, is sport in Europe still deals with a lot of consumables. So, you know, I look at some of our partners in Europe, and they still deal with physical season tickets. You know, it might be a season ticket card. What became really clear to us in our first conversations in the US was that the consumable market really wasn't a market that the US sports owners wanted to go down. And because Ticketmaster and other ticketing companies had spent a lot of time and a lot of hard work with clubs like the Jags in really getting mobile tickets into the app, there's a real benefit, again, as Chad alludes to, because the adoption of the app is already significantly high. So to add some more utility functionality to it, i.e., being able to pay, you don't have the hard yards of trying to drive the adoption of the app in the first point. And then I think the other thing is, as I mentioned, is if you're going to have that 365 stadium challenge, you really need to have myriad of cashless solutions. So I'll give you an example. I know some NFL clubs where outside of the NFL season, they will have events straight after the NFL season. It might be a rodeo, as an example. Well, rodeo fans are not going to use the app of the NFL, but what they may use is a wristband very specifically branded, you know, for the rodeo. We'll use the rodeo as an example. And that would mean that Chad, as an example, would be able to pull in that data from events outside of the Jags games. And again, it gives you then a really good idea of the demographic differences and the individual behavior differences of those kinds of fans. And what, of course, that then means is you can really look to convert those visitors who aren't coming to the NFL games, but they're coming to other events. You can look at really getting how you can get them then to come to the NFL games, and then vice versa. And it might be you can see that they drink bud or whatever, but why not offer them a free bud if they come to an NFL game? So that idea of being able to capture that data no matter what type of event comes into your venue is actually a really key element to having a myriad of cashless solutions. Again, touching on what Chad said about having an older demographic, it means no matter what your demographic is, you can hopefully find a solution that's going to be palatable to the fan.
Yeah, Joe, I think it's important to note that was a significant piece for us, because we own an amphitheater, outdoor music amphitheater that's attached to our NFL stadium. It's a 6,000 seat amphitheater, and we host about 40 to 50 concerts a year. So understanding who is going to those concerts, What are their behaviors? What do they look like? And just because you bought a concert ticket does not mean you're a prospect to buy an NFL ticket. But if I can make your NFL experience very similar to what your concert experience was, that might be just enough to get you over the fence to try that out. And we have had a very tough time up until now being able to figure that out because we haven't had their purchase behavior in the stadium. And just serving up an ad to say, come to a Jaguars game wasn't quite enough. So we're going to be able to layer that on in this season now that we'll have that extra data point.
Okay, that's interesting. And it obviously goes beyond the Budweiser at halftime, this data. It's very widespread in terms of improving the user experience. But I just wondered if in terms of sponsorships, how much this data can be integrated and how much this experience can be integrated with sponsorships, and whether the two can sort of complement each other.
Well, on my front, I can tell you how I will be using it here, right? So if a certain sponsor has a targeted demographic they're trying to reach or trying to grow in a certain silo, I can use this data and market to those people. So if they're trying to convert somebody that is that doesn't behave a certain way and get them to, I get to show them through real data that I'm making an impact. So if we wanted to run a marketing campaign and in the stadium, I do a special offer, and then I can track not only the quantity of items that were sold, but who they were sold to, and then go back and retarget. That's the piece that they were missing. They knew how many Budweisers were sold in the stadium. They did not know who was buying them and what they looked like demographically and how they behaved outside the stadium. But now I can layer that onto them and say, hey, Budweiser, we can target them in the stadium, then know who they are and understand what the behaviors are like out of the stadium through demographic profiling, and then message to them so that they carry on those behaviors, whether they're at restaurants, concerts, other venues, or just out in the general marketplace.
And I guess the same sentiment applies for in stadia ads as well. If you know that the LED board or the halftime ad comes up advertising a certain brand, that prompts then loads of people to go to the terraces, we call it in England. I'm not sure what, where the bars in halftime and go and indulge in that brand. And that's a good sign for that advert, and vice versa. It works the other way, I guess.
And we know the exact timing of those transactions, who they are and where they were sitting and where they were coming from. So how far did they travel to go find your products? Do we need to move product closer to where they're sitting? That's a big way for me to improve my customer service. Is if I see a fan that is in what you would call a stand 105 and they drink a certain liquor that is only available at an area farther away, I now know that I can bring that product closer to them, which will increase my revenues and make their experience better. So there's a lot of different ways to improve your experience from this data.
Okay, and this partnership is in its relevant infancy. I think it seems like it's going to be a long-term partnership, and it's relatively new. Chad, from your perspective, how have you're essentially going to be hit with a tsunami of data now, and you're going to be bombarded with all these valuable assets that you're going to want to use, and you're going to want to get the most out of. How much preparation have you had to do to prepare for this and to be able to fully maximize the partnership and the incoming data?
Well, that was a big piece of it for us. Is I am only limited by my bandwidth. So having all the data without the insight, having all the data without an actionable opportunity doesn't do us any good. And that's where Tappit comes in, is they also help with the insight and the actionable items. So they're not just dumping a bunch of data into my server and saying, good luck, Chad, go figure out what to do with it. They're helping guide the strategy and the insight that comes off of that.
Okay, that's interesting. And Jason, from your perspective, like how do you help Chad and the Jaguars sort of get the most out of the data?
Yeah, I mean, we have a reporting suite which is in real time. So somebody like the Jags can have a look at it during a game, pre-game, post-game, wherever they see fit. But as Chad mentioned, the idea of the portal and the reporting suite is that all that insight and actionable insight is there, and it's very tangible and very transparent. So I think that's a key bit. Chad's mentioned it a couple of times, and he's 100% right. Data in its own right, without it being actionable, is a complete waste of time. So we've spent a lot of time, and we spend a lot of resource ongoing, really, to try to ensure that the reporting suite and the portal is very self-explanatory and very insightful. But I think by the side of that, the more we cultivate the relationship via dialogue, the more we can bespoke that dashboard, if you like, for the Jags based on particular KPIs that we might not have considered, but is an important element for Chad and his team. So it's an ongoing dialogue and sometimes with the data, it does give you the chance to do some A/B testing and try to find out again what does improve the fan experience, what doesn't. I think, again, the other thing I would say is sometimes with the insight, it's not always about necessarily, marketing, segmentation. Sometimes a lot of the data can be used really to understand where there can be improvements operationally as well. If you see there are certain bars for whatever reason that don't seem to transact in the same way at the same pace, and you can do it again in real time. You don't have to be in the concourse to see there might be some kind of bottleneck. Your data in real time will show you that. So I think, we will continue to work with Chad and his team to ensure that we are giving them that actionable insight. And I think the one thing I would say is it's not a coincidence, really, that we've gone live first with the Jags. Without trying to be sycophantic towards Chad on this call, working with somebody like Chad is really, really useful for us. I think if we'd have launched in the US with a passive club who didn't really understand the space, we probably won't be able to make the week-on-week improvements I want us to make to that actionable cycle data. And I think, we'll learn a lot off the Jags, and hopefully they will learn some things from us. And we will be able to benchmark. The one good thing we've got is because we work globally, we worked in 18 countries last year, we do know what good looks like as well. So I think that benchmarking piece going forward will also be really interesting for us to discuss as well, as two different entities.
Brilliant. And I did just want to ask you both a little bit about sports wagering and the potential of impact of, we've seen sports betting open up over the US. I don't think the Jaguars have a sports betting partner right now, if I'm correct. No. No. What do you think the implications could be for a sports wagering partner with a club and stadia wagering or this type of partnership?
For us, it's a state-by-state decision. So There are some NFL teams that do have legalized sports gambling and others that do not. There's different levels of that. And then there's what's available in your marketplace. So as an example, Jacksonville does not have any brick and mortar sports book or sports gambling properties. Whereas if you go down to Miami, there are many. Hard Rock Casino, and they have the name of the stadium that the Miami Dolphins play in, right? So it also depends on what's available in your marketplace. Obviously, there's some online partners, and the NFL's oversight of that is continuing to evolve. So we're unfortunately a market that has not yet been able to take advantage of that, but I do see significant opportunity in the very near future.
And significant opportunity that can be expanded by a partnership like this that's cashless, and I can see them two working well together potentially.
Well, again, I think for us too, if your entire experience at the stadium starts to be through this mobile phone, your payments are there, your ordering of your food and beverage is there, your ticket is there, your sports gambling is there, your predictive gaming is there. That enhances that whole experience right now from a technology standpoint. And that's really what we're getting to. The next phase of our evolution is they get to look on their phone and say, what are the lines at the concessions? What are the lines at the restrooms? Where's the best place for me to go? And be able to make sure their experience is completely managed through this. And I think the sports gambling, the daily gambling, the predictive gaming, and all of those things will be a part of that.
Yeah, okay. I think that's right. I mean, we're having a lot of conversations actually around that betting piece, and obviously, as you sort of mentioned there, really, Joe, it's, you know, the legislation obviously on a state-by-state basis in the US is just starting to loosen up, but obviously we're having conversations not just in North America about it, but certainly in other parts of the world where, you know, the legislation's been a little bit more established. And of course, I think what's exciting for some of our partners around that betting piece with our technology is the fact that, you know, you will have then that opportunity to bet in a slightly different way. So as an example, you know, if there's a field goal, you could very quickly lay a bet, as an example, using our kind of technology, whilst you're literally sat in your seat extremely quickly. So I think it does open up opportunities, and I think a lot of our partners are starting to see that betting opportunity with this kind of technology could really again enhance both the fan experience, as mentioned by Chad, but also again from a revenue perspective and a potential sponsorship perspective. So it's certainly an area that we're in dialogue with. What I would say is that I think from our perspective, you know, we don't go into any market we certainly don't go into any market where we're not really clear about, is it going to improve the fan experience? Is it ethical? You know, and is it an element that we feel as though, again, is going to benefit the majority of our partners? But it's definitely a very interesting, certainly in North America, it's a very interesting aspect that I know a lot of partners and ourselves are in discussions about.
Yeah, and from my perspective, it's, you know, if you go and watch a team and their betting partner is, just say, brand A, and you go in there, it doesn't really matter that brand A is plastered all over the stadium. I'm going to go on my phone and bet with brand B that I use all the time. But if you could somehow sort of correlate the two, where because you're in the stadium, you're betting with the betting partner, it could really, I guess, increase value in sponsorship.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did want to ask you a little bit about, because Chad, I know you have a little bit of experience in English football or English soccer in terms of your relationship with Fulham. Do you see this technology transcending to the UK, or do you see it, or I should say Europe really, or do you see it as a little bit more of a difficult pitch to European football fans?
Well, we do know that their experience is very different. Their purchase behavior, timing, and what they are and are not able to do is very different than the United States, right? So we have our fans here that are purchasing food and beverage and alcoholic beverage and bringing it to their seat and doing that throughout. But
we could dream.
But the insight again of just customizing that experience for those fans, understanding what they do or don't do. Fulham has a significant project with the Fulham Pier and the new development that's going on there that will add significantly that 365 experience. Fulham Pier will be open all year, restaurants, bars, athletic clubs. So I think being able to have that solution enhances that piece of it as well. So I do see an opportunity here, and Jason knows, as that's starting to come online, that we're already having those conversations about when it's appropriate to integrate, how it's appropriate to integrate, and I see some exciting opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, my observation is, you know, we work with some English clubs, of course, but I think the big difference between US sport and probably European and maybe particularly UK sport is you've got slightly different challenges. What the US teams are so incredibly good at is increasing the dwell time. You know, they've really, you know, with fan parks and the way the entertainment works, and the weather obviously helps a little bit as well in some occasions. that dwell time increase, particularly again at NFL, they've done an incredible job there. So our kind of technology works really well because, whether it be the pro shop, whether it be parking, whether it be the fan parks, then within the stadiums themselves, you can keep that kind of closed loop system and keep everything in that ecosystem centrally. Whereas in the UK and Europe, they've really struggled to increase the dwell time, and that's why you've seen, teams like Man City, etc., try to introduce fan parks to increase that dwell time, and it's why Fulham are doing what they're doing, as Chad's just alluded to. But actually, where our technology works really well in the UK is, if you think of the normal football or soccer fan experience in the UK, and again, I say this as a football fan myself, is you tend to you turn up at the ground, you try to find some change to park. You then try to find some more change to buy a programme. You then very rarely go into the club shop or the pro shop because it's absolutely packed. You then get in a queue to get into the stadium itself. You then very rarely go for food and beverage at half time because it's absolutely packed. So actually they make it, football fans in the UK, clubs make it extremely difficult for you to spend money, hence the reason the average transaction's £4. So actually with our technology, the reason why clubs use our technology and why they went down this route in the Bundesliga is because you've got a very small window to spend money in the pro shop or to get transactions through, and you've got a very small window at half time. So actually those transactions and the speed of transactions during those periods of time is really extremely important. So the data benefits, again, as Chad mentioned, are exactly the same, but actually the speed of transaction is probably a bigger element in European sport because of that pressure on those particular short windows.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I haven't been to Old Trafford since the pandemic, and the scuffle at the turnstiles, the big melee of people at the turnstiles, and then again the melee of people to buy a overpriced beer is ridiculous, and it gives me nightmares to think about that in, dare I say, the new normal, as everybody's calling it, after COVID. It just doesn't seem feasible. So is this type of technology and that boosts efficiency and transactions going to become more integral, after COVID, do you think?
Without a doubt. I just know with the conversations we're having, without a doubt. But I think what's also happening is, and again, you've seen it a lot, that a lot of European sporting organisations, they're spending more and more time looking at the US model, looking, as I say, about the dwell time increase, what they're doing around fan parks. I think the experience of going to US sport is very, very different from going to UK sport. And I think clubs who don't start to improve that fan experience and going forward, making fans and their staff feel safe, they're actually going to struggle a little bit. I think the next generation of football fan, and I've got young sons, their expectations different from mine. I've had 40 years of going to football clubs, and if you look at my experience, I've been going to my club for 40 years. They know nothing about me. They don't know when I turn up at the club. They don't know where I park. They don't know what I buy at the club shop. They have no idea what I buy or when I go at half time. They send me very generic emails based on nothing I've done in the last 40 years of going to a club. And Chad's key point is, you want to be able to, for the club to recognise what kind of experience you want. If I was going to the theatre, and I've had some of the experience that I've had going to football games, some of which you've just discussed, Joe, I wouldn't go to the theatre again. So they work on the basis that even if I had a bad experience at Leeds, I'm not going to start supporting Manchester United. But you can't do that forever, and you certainly can't do it with the new generation of football fans, because they support, they might, even if they live in England, they may also support Barcelona. Getting on a cheap flight to Barcelona and sitting there and having a better experience than the one you've just discussed is an option now. So yeah, the world is definitely changing, and I think what we're seeing is, you know, people like Chad and the Jags and organisations like the Jags are, you know, these forward-thinking clubs. They're really going to steal a march on some of these very traditional, antiquated organisations who are absolutely taking it for granted that no matter what the fan experience is, they're going to keep coming back week after week. I saw it when my background was working for record companies, and I saw it with independent retailers when they said, you know, when the internet came out, people will still want to, you know, come in and buy physical CDs and tapes and whatever else. Never went to .com businesses and then went out of business because they did not adapt to the way people were really starting to consume music. I can say exactly the same thing happening with festivals, with sporting organisations and events. We are at a fork in the road, I think, for organisations to really understand post-COVID what fans and what staff want at the environment that they're going to.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I'm conscious we've sort of running out of time, but I just have one more brief question. This partnership is quite young. This tech, dare I say, is also a little bit young in terms of being implemented into a lot of stadiums. How exciting is the future for this type of tech and its relationship with sports stadiums and sports clubs as it grows further and as it progresses?
I'll let Chad answer. I can certainly answer some of it, but I'll be interested in Chad's view as well.
Yeah, so when we say the partnership is young, it is. We've only had one game. We were one of only 2 clubs that had fans for week 1 of the NFL season. It just so happens that Tappit works with both of those clubs, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Because we were on the forefront of getting ready, it was important that this partnership was ready. But like I mentioned, it was in the works well before our COVID environment. We would have rolled this out had the season carried on in a normal environment without COVID. We're just limited with the number of fans that are in our stadium at the current point. Only having one game, I'm now just working through the actionable data. I've changed where some of my food and beverage is being distributed in the stadium already. Wow. From some of the information I've learned. So I've moved product and I've opened up certain point of sale locations that weren't open before and shuffled. So to Jason's point, there's a real-time actionable opportunity for us where I can adjust in the middle of a game. Not come back later and say, where did we miss and what should we do different next time? I can actually change it there. And I think that's what, when fans see the insight of what we're doing and see the results from that, they're going to understand without a doubt it's worth the investment in that partnership because there's revenue opportunity that goes with those fan experience pieces. So I think there's a lot of clubs that are going to be very excited about this.